Hello, hello. It's March 7, 2023. It's a weekly SIG Node meeting. Welcome, everybody. We have a lot of things on agenda, but I want to get started with some statistics, as we typically do. So there is 241 PRs active. It's less than last week. I think we're down by 7, but it's still a very high number. I think one of the problems that not everybody around this time, and I think Brunel is not around to approve many things, but we trying to be creative here. So if you have a form of what was happening, you can look at merged and closed PRs, some highlights. I think 2 or 3 caps were completely merged into 3, so we have good progress there. I also wanted to highlight that we have about 40, I think it was 40 last I checked. Yeah, 40 open items with label priority important soon, meaning that, I mean, typically this priority means that it needs to be addressed in this release. It feels to me that not all of them can be addressed in this release. And what we do on tomorrow's meeting, like CI meeting, and we already did it last week, we remove some of the items, especially very long waiting bugs from important soon. So this milestone will be cleaner, and we'll have better picture of what needs to be fixed and what shouldn't be fixed. I think maybe late this week we will start applying milestone so we can know what definitely needs to be in this release and what can wait for next release or whatever. Any questions on current status? Yeah, code freeze is very soon. And last announcement is release team asked to start a feature block if your cap is moving stages in this release. Please consider adding a feature block about that. You'll promote a feature, and it is very useful for any end users of Kubernetes. So please do that. Okay, with that, I think first item is Kevin.
Yeah, I'm online. Hi everyone. So I just have a brief item. I was starting work on a KEP for adding a condition for pending pods that are stuck to the configuration errors, and someone brought up in this KEP that there's a condition invalid image name, which is usually for like it's validated against I think Docker for regular expression checks about like whether or not a user has all capitals in the image, or they're using HTTP or whatever fails for whatever reason. So I kind of created a separate PR, the POC, for adding validation into the validating of a pod so that it can actually check these and not schedule them and not get them into a kubelet. And I guess I'm just curious if this is probably should be a separate KEP in its own, because I know there was some discussion about whether or not it might be, it is a breaking change if people are relying on, if they schedule a pod and then they want to have a separate controller changing that to get it working. I don't know. But this was kind of, wasn't sure if it's not pressing for that. I don't think it needs to be in this release, but I was just curious what if anyone has thoughts on this, please comment on this PR.
Yeah, I know some examples when there are images that doesn't exist, but they still conform to the standard format of image names. So those images may be present locally or somehow being like replaced or tagged locally. I don't know whether, and like backward compatibility is definitely a big problem. I don't know how much it applies with HTTP instead of HTTPS. So I think this is a good thing to highlight for an end user, but yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else has an opinion here? And like crazy use cases that you currently using?
One person did suggest, I think it's static pods, about whether or not when I think when you're creating a pod, if it fails, should it be allowed to fail, and then it just shows up in the pod logs, or if we want the logs buried inside I guess kubelet or whatever. That was one suggestion for not going forward with it. So
yeah, I think originally your PR was moving the validation from kubelet to API, but I think for static pods, we definitely need to keep the validation. The question is how much it will be exposed. So, okay, if anybody on the call knows what to check and can comment on this PR, please do so. I personally don't know whether it has enough information for being accepted in this release right now, just because we don't know what we will break.
that's fair.
So Kevin, I assign this to myself. I will take a look. Sorry, I haven't looked at this one, so that's why I don't have more background. But you already have the PR, so I don't know what's the prefer. Is the cap, separate cap or PR? But let me first look at the PR first. Is that
Yeah, that'll be good. It was kind of a separate from the KEP. So yeah, the PR is the KEP started a discussion about this.
So I assigned to myself, and also I just mark your previous cap to the next release. So because obviously we're missing this one, but for book tracking for next one, so we mark that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for fixing it. Francesco, do you want to talk about rate limiting? It's a very exciting topic.
Yes. Hey, everyone. So first of all, this is in the context of graduation of the pod resources, removing the pod resources feature gate, which was identified as 127 issue. Just things we want to do. So during the when we identified the GA graduation criteria, two items were prominent. One is Windows support, and the other is rate limiting. Actually, the denial of service prevention. So during the API review, those items were identified and those questions were asked, and this is why I'm bringing to this audience. And we don't need to, if there is an easy online answer, great. Otherwise, it's always very good to chime in the CAP and to answer Jordan's comments. So very quickly, the items are, we are adding rate limiting for pod resources, which is good, but the kubelet has already a bunch of other endpoints, which are even more costly and possibly delicate with this respect. So is it okay to add just for here? I guess Jordan is asking about the general plans, or so this is it. The second item is, this is actually an implementation thing, but it's good to have a direction. So the current implementation is global. So clients, a rogue client can consume all the budget and another client could be starving. And the third item is, okay, I'm exposing QPS and bars setting, but the general Kubernetes as a project is moving toward a different direction. So the question is if this approach is good enough, or do we want or need something else? So those are the points. Thank you.
Okay, I had this comment about being applicable to all endpoints from very beginning. I think it's it is a good thing to have, and it will be strange only have it on pod resources. The only thing that is unfair is that we're blocking pod resources graduation by this bigger chunk of work. So yeah, I want to make sure that we, that we are not blocking, like these pod resources are not completely blocked. Like it's on by default and it's beta, so people are using it, right? So it's not like totally blocked.
Yes, I agree with the sentiment. By the way, we should have having a plan for all the endpoints, but so it's a good question to ask. Thanks.
And can you tell if there is any analysis already done, like what other expensive endpoints we mentioned? Metrics.
Give me just a second. If okay, examples are like pod exec, the logs, the port forward, and I'm sure there are open. There are more.
Yeah, because what I worry about is metrics. Like if you start rate limiting metrics, there may be all sorts of crazy use cases for metrics that we unlikely will cover with single setting. With other like logs and pod resource, we may be better covered. I don't know.
There is another thing that the pod resources API is one of, I think, the only one or one of the very few endpoints that are exposed to Unix using a Unix domain socket, which is special for another reason. So I think there is some room to discuss why pod resources API is special. However, I agree that the general point is worth discussing. So it's a very good point.
So do we want to get on this PR and comment on this PR?
I think that if there are easy answer we can have right now, great. Otherwise, it's very good to just comment on the PR. I sent all the links in the agenda. I added all the links in the agenda document. I think commenting is fine.
Yeah, I don't know if this was discussed already, but another idea was would be to have extremely high limit, so it will protect from like very abusive behavior, but it wouldn't limit anybody, any real case. So maybe that may be an alternative.
In the sorry, in the very limited context of the pod resources API, the limits are currently infinite, and you actually have to opt in to set any form of limit. And so this is kind of like you suggest, because the limit is actually infinite.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear enough. So I was thinking like if we can build in some limits that not exposed as API, so we don't have to force ourselves into this discussion, that will protect from DDoS attack that was raised in CAP. So
Yes.
we will unblock this PR from CAP from graduating, and then if this limit needs to be adjusted lower, then we can have more discussions.
I understand what you mean. The comment, however, was about the general fact that we are worrying about rate limiting just for this. This is what I understand. But I think that we can totally keep iterating offline if you like. I will really love to. And I don't want to steal more time to other items.
Okay. Any more comments on that? Anybody wants to chime in? Okay. And yeah, Francesca, I don't want to push for graduation of this cap. I think we all know that every new cap brings more questions, and it may not seem fair that this question is addressed during specific cap, but we have no other option. So it will be blocked. It will be blocked.
I understand. It's okay. I think the question is right, and thank you for your input.
Thank you. Next item is mine. SIG scalability came, and that they suggesting that we have another QPS, API QPS limit on kubelet. It's two settings right now that currently set at 5 and 10. 5 API calls per second and 10 burst limit. The suggestion is to bump them and SIG scalability saying that we can even like the goal is to not limit it at all. So API server will handle everything and handle everything fairly. So there is no need to worry about it on client side. But as a first step, they suggest to bump it a little bit. I think currently it's 50 and 100. Yeah, 50 per second and burst is 100. There are two questions. First question is mechanics of that. So right now we have everything documented, and default value is documented as a field in the field name. Let me find out. Yeah, so today is just documented as a default 5 in our config file. The suggestion is to just bump it here without doing anything else, so it will like better limits will apply to everybody instead of like us suggesting that best practice is to increase this limit. And since we did so much work on API server to handle this load, it shouldn't be a problem for anybody. And if somebody wants to return to previous behaviors, they can always downgrade to 5 and 10 as before. So yeah, I see no problem with this change. But I want to know if there is any concerns from anybody else, and if it can be moved forward.
I just reviewed. I give the looks good to me. But the last week when they proposed it is the 1,000, I do have concern because I do see that people didn't really have the test. They basically just say, oh, we have the enhancement on the API server, so that's why we think about this. But I remember 2 years ago when we measured, we still ran into some problems. So that's why 2 years ago we didn't bump, right? So that's why, but I'm okay with the current because in-house, I did see some people bump that one to the similar number and actually it's work very well. So that's why I'm okay with the current number. If we are still work well, next time I'm okay to try keep bumping. But I'm not comfortable. Just direct goes to the 1,000.
Yeah, me and Don are both in the same company, so if anybody else has an opinion, I heard on a discussion there, thought maybe you can comment about that, that Amazon increased it to 10 and 20.
Yeah. So sometime last year, I bumped it to 10 and 20 for our default AMIs, EKS, L2, and then Bottle Rocket. And I didn't go higher just because we didn't see much of an improvement for the number of pods per node and sort of the scale tests we were running. But it hasn't caused any issues. It's been running production for all of our customers since last year at 10 and 20. But yeah, as soon as this goes in, I'll remove that. So we'll get the new defaults that are even higher.
Okay.
So Todd, can you comment on that also in the PR? I also comment to provide my, so comment that one so we have more data. Yeah.
And Don, mechanics of that, right now it's beta API, like config is a beta API, so we probably fine changing any defaults that we want, right? So I don't think we need to do any extra work.
Yeah, and there's a graph of like some of the metrics I collected, and there's on there, and there's some links to the PRs I submitted to our repositories for Bottle Rocket in particular, which has some of the numbers that we gathered. So. Yeah, in particular, we were interested in the auto scaling case where you have lots of pending pods, a new node launches, and then a lot of pods all get scheduled at once. And that sort of really hammers the API server from a single kubelet.
Yeah, many config maps and secret. Thank you. Okay, I think if this is okay for everybody, we can go ahead with merging it in. Mihai?
Yes. Yeah, so basically looking for SIG Node reviewers of the PRs for the subject that I mentioned before, so that to make sure that all pods end up in terminal phase. Actually, one decision is that we only wait with deletion from kubelet if there is a finalizer, because job uses finalizers, and this way we make sure that we don't worsen actually due to performance due to the low QPS for pods that don't use finalizers. So if you don't use finalizer, you generally don't care about the final state probably. So we still transition, but we don't enforce that it's like it may be deleted from kubelet area. Anyway, so in the process, it turns out that we also have an issue with running pods. So that's why I created also the second PR for the running pods. So yeah, basically looking for reviews. David Porter started reviewing them, but it would be of course good to have more eyes on this.
Okay, I don't think we need to follow up right now. So thank you. If anybody interested to participate in the review, please do so. Vinay, in-place pod scaling.
Hi. Okay, this is a quick status update. It looks like we managed to score 2 bugs, and one of them is a release blocker that showed up. Let me start the video here. Right, so one of them is the release blocker. It showed up in the GK internal tests, which was kind of a blind spot for us because we did not have any tests. There's no test coverage in our current CI that catches this case, a single kubelet. I was able to use the local up cluster to repro this issue. Had to make some small changes to the command, the CMD kubelet code base to force that null kube client. It doesn't work out of the box, but I think it verified. Jordan Leggett had some comments. He looked at it and then has approved it right now, and it should be merging and addressing that blocking CI. And we'll find out if there is anything else that comes up from it. The second issue is this: there was a CI failure, that new CI test failure that popped up. Thank you for bringing it up. So this happened after we merged. When I did my initial analysis, I looked into, I figured out it's not likely that we regressed it because this test has been read since day one, that it was introduced in December sometime and it never had a successful run. And when I looked more closely, I saw that the failure pattern is similar. There are cases where the framework is trying to create a pod and that fails. And this is before and after the PR merge. And I'm not exactly sure about why it's randomly failing in different places. It looked like memory could be an issue, but I didn't really see any more evidence of that. So at this point, the investigation is still pending. I'm happy to take a look at it further, but my priorities are a little different at this point. If this needs immediate attention, I guess someone else could take a look.
I remember you also re-enabled in place test CI jobs specifically. Are they all green now?
No, actually, I just was looking at it and there is a merge conflict. I'm resolving it right now. So it should be done in the next, after this meeting, I'll finish resolving that and then maybe an update. You may need to re-LGTM. I'll just ping you on Slack for that. Besides that, yeah, I saw you approved it. Thank you. Once that is in, we should, I'm hoping to see that they run clean, because the pull job, which is similar to what the CI job does and the alpha job does for C group V1 and V2 respectively, they're working fine. So there are no issues with that. I haven't seen any problems. I'm expecting no surprises here, but you never know. We'll find out. At this point, given that we have 2 bugs, how do you feel? How does SIG Node feel about this PR? I'm kind of leaning towards, okay, it should stay.
Yeah, if there is big green tests and it's fine, let's just confirm that it's actually green, and especially when your new jobs will be merged, it will indicate that the feature is working.
Yeah. I think it is, that confidence is there. I think I already pinged Tim for looking at he wanted a couple of follow-up changes to restructure the naming of resize policy. That PR is out there. I just pinged him to look at it last night. And I guess I'm at a point where I'm going to create that blog PR. We're not going to kick this PR out at this point, are we?
Well, so far there's no plan, but
Okay.
but the assumption you are going to fix the broken tests. We are going to fix
Yeah. The critical ones, I'm definitely fixing them, especially if it's clearly identified as my issue here. Anything that's not like this other PR, the other bug, I'm happy to look at it, but my priorities are slightly different after the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, what triggered me is it says C group V2 specific test, and I was thinking that C group V2 may have some role in here. But if investigation doesn't indicate that, it's fine, because I think we mostly were testing with C group V1 before.
Yeah, no, the pull job that I have, which I put it in the comments of this bug, that uses cgroup v2, and cgroup v1 is currently covered with the alpha features job, and against containerd 166. I think I think both run. Mike, if you're here, please correct me if that's not the case. But I believe my previous understanding for another meeting was that we run both cgroup v1 and v2 in the alpha job. For the pull job that I have, I run cgroup v2. But yeah, once we enable this, we'll know for sure. So this is the next big ticket item I need to work on besides creating a placeholder PR before the March 8th, tomorrow, I guess. So yeah, I'll shoot you a quick message as soon as I fix the conflict.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Don't say there is no plan to kick it out, especially when we will confirm that it's working on multiple, like both cgroup v1 and v2. I was under the impression we only testing on v1, but yeah, it's good to know. Thank you.
High confidence, no revert.
Yeah, the timeline I had was, okay, if there is any major issues that's going to happen, it's going to happen in the first 3 days, and I came pretty close. Jordan created that bug on day 4, so not bad.
Okay. Yeah. Next one is Todd and Mohammed.
Oh, hi there. This is my first meeting here. I'm usually involved in SIG release and SIG casing for work, but this is something that I'm working with Todd on. So for those of you who don't know, we have a lot of money to spend on AWS. So we want to run some of the E2E tests in the Kubernetes repository there. The kubelet or the node E2E tests are much simpler to run on AWS, as they are usually single node tests. And we don't have to worry about stuff in that cluster / on the queue up shenanigans that DIMS and others are looking at. So Todd wrote a PR that makes the runner run tests in AWS, and that works nicely. I was successful in getting tests to pass on like Ubuntu 22.04 servers on EC2. So I just need to wrap up a few things, but it looks promising. Todd, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sort of part of the discussion, there was another PR today by DIMS that was removing some of the vendored AWS cloud provider stuff. And then there's a discussion like whether the remote runners should be part of the test infrastructure at all, or should be pulled out so that you can actually extract all the cloud provider specific code out of the Kubernetes repository. So currently it's not. There's a GCE runner, and as Mohammed said, that first PR adds in an AWS runner, so you can easily run the node E2E on AWS. So I guess part of the question is like, sort of what is the plan there? Is it to eventually move all of that stuff out to the external repository so that the Kubernetes repo doesn't have those vendored modules? If that's plan, is it okay to go ahead and merge in the additional code now and then sort of do it all at once?
I think one of the questions I had before all this work is, I know that there is a test on call happening like for open source. Like if there are some issues with the environment, I know who to ping, and they can help me troubleshoot what's going on. I'm not sure, like if we'll have tests on AWS, is there some on call, or maybe it's the same rotation, it's a different rotation? That may be interesting conversation to have.
I can answer that question. So the Kubernetes infrastructure on AWS, community members can access it. One of the things we're looking to do before it goes to production, remember there's a lot of engineering work we need to do beforehand, but the idea is once it goes to production, everybody in the Kubernetes org can browse all the accounts, log in, and take a look at failing things for themselves. So for example, you're in SIG Node, right? So let's say you're running E2E tests on AWS. There's an instance that's failing. You should be able to log into the AWS account and look around and see what's going on. With regards to test infra on call, my understanding is that those people manage the power clusters and don't really get involved in broken tests. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's less about broken tests, but it's more about infrastructure.
Oh,
But,
you should be able to access the accounts eventually. That's the plan. The AWS account will be open for everybody to take a look and access. So yeah, that'll take a while, but the prerequisite work will easily take a month and a bit to sort out. But that work is being chased on a separate track as well.
yeah, I guess yeah, one bigger question is how it will be approached from SIG testing, because again, like there is like SIG testing that manage a lot of stuff, like including test images, for instance. Test images are some magically being updated, and we don't need to worry about it. And if infrastructure is not working, it's also not something that we in SIG Node will need to worry about. If this test will start failing, and like we are not sure if it's infrastructure or not, I'm not sure how we will proceed with investigating, and like who will be engaged into that.
Okay, let me just note that down real quick. So I can take it back to the SIG case info meeting. 1 second.
And especially like these days, we even have problems with like existing set of tests, and we heavily regressed recently because we didn't spend too much time on that. So now we barely can make those existing tests working. This was indicated before by Vinay. Some of the containerd tests were broken for a while, and that's why we think it's maybe Vinay problem, but maybe not Vinay problem. So yeah, I wonder.
Anything else?
May I ask what's the goal for this one? And for this one, so maybe I can better understand.
So the background is we need to start running many Kubernetes E2E tests on AWS. If you remember last year, Amazon gives a lot of money, right? So we need to use that, right? And good candidate for migration, or well, not migration, but additional coverage on AWS, for example, is the Node E2E tests. We run an experiment and see how difficult is it to, for example, write the runner to build instances in AWS. It was very easy, right? Which is why we've got a patch in the repository that does that. So the work is done. We just need to get it merged and start running some optional tests on AWS over the next coming weeks, and then maybe have a future conversation about promoting those jobs to like master informing, master release blocking, all that stuff. But yeah.
So is there some similar like the on the AWS side, there have some like the in-house equivalent like the Node team responsible for those because we used to have like the in-house. I'm from Google, right? So I used to build the Node team. Like I built the SIG Node, and also in-house we build the Node team. So one of the things, especially I told them, is kind of make sure the CI tests are green. And even internally, we have the reorg a couple times, like the Sergey, correct me, make me honestly here, even like the Sergey's team and the take over Node and GK, particularly GK Node, I also ask the team and make sure the CI relative is green. That's the highest priority, basically. Besides anything else, that's the top one I send it to them. So can we have like the CI SIG Node have the CI project, the sub project. I think the Sergey is the lead from that one. So we can start from there. If you have the engineer, nominate some engineer, take some role there. Maybe that make this is really useful, because we been trying like the couple years ago. I've been talked to. We tried a couple times, like we have like the E2E test on the Azure for Windows, right? So we also have the E2E test in the past also on the AWS. I realized the only thing really happened is on that cloud provider, they also donate some engineer on top of that, and to make everything so smooth, aligned together. So then otherwise, those E2E tests, AWS tried, this is not the first time they tried to add E2E test, but the previous only green once, and then nobody really pick up. And so,
Okay.
so those kind of tests is
Okay, go ahead. My understanding is that all you need is a standard Linux server that's running a particular operating system, right? You strap it in a generic standard using Cloud Init, for example, and then you log in and you run the test and then you kill the server, right? That was my understanding of all you need from AWS, right? If the image wasn't built correctly or there's something wrong with the operating system, then that's a fun conversation to have. But I believe that's far and few in between. As someone who's run infrastructure on the public cloud for a long time, you take a Linux server, you install whatever you want on there, and then you run the test and you kill the server. I believe that was the only expectation that was set, unless I'm missing something.
So a lot of times the devil is on the detail, right? So that's
Okay.
why initially we definitely need someone. Otherwise, those green is the right, and who is going to make sure that's the green for sometimes, and make sure that the procedures built properly, right? So, so if there's no clearly easy way to using, and people just couldn't do the charge, because if you really think about the open source projects kind of volunteer based, right? So the company volunteered, donate their engineering resource, computer resource, all those kind of things. So there's some way we need to make the other people communities life easier. And so then we can keep our community is more healthy, keep move forward and benefit more users, right? So that's kind of, so because in the past we do have these cases, then we just don't know what's underneath, why the node is just died. And should we respect that failure or not respect that failure? And the engineer don't feel like they have the knowledge to debug those things. And they also maybe don't have access to this one. So that's slow down. Then they lose the interest. That's the problem.
Okay.
And so that's why I prefer like at the earlier stage, we at least have someone from AWS to help to make this whole thing smooth for sometimes, yeah, at least.
Okay. Okay, let me jot this down.
And we have meetings on Wednesdays the same time, 10 to 11 for CI group. You can join and we can discuss further. I think even enabling for vanilla Ubuntu, it sounds like no brainer. Like, why wouldn't we do that? But at the same time, like knowing how many issues with images we had before, and it's just issues are not very easy to troubleshoot. Like something happened, like test started failing, and then somebody need to go and dig what's happening. And in the end, we found that some image was changed underneath, and then there is some incompatibility or whatever. And it takes a lot of time and effort to investigate. So minimizing that effort will be.
Okay, I have another question about that.
Yeah.
You kind of said running vanilla Ubuntu images is a no-brainer, right? I'm curious why the project has done. I'm a latecomer, so I don't really know what happened in the past.
I don't remember what other images we tried. Don may have better memory. So some images will started failing at some point because of some, like, I don't know, maybe kernel components or whatever. And especially for complicated tests like eviction tests that requires like the specific behavior of eviction. So those tests are really hard to troubleshoot. And if we add one more image type that may fail at some point, and we kind of increase entropy, increase amount of ways things may fail, and it's not clear who will be investigating that. If we have some right now we're using GKE flavored Ubuntu images. I think it's called Ubuntu Cloud or something, and those, at least we know what to expect from them, and we have some contacts who to ask if something is not working. For vanilla Ubuntu, we don't really have canonical like on call, and like we cannot just tell them, can you help us investigate or something is wrong with this image.
Okay.
So I mean,
is there a public document that talks about what's happening in those GKE Ubuntu images? Like, how is that different from the vanilla image? Because like Google publishes when they say what they've done to the vanilla public Ubuntu image that they provide from the upstream images.
Let me chime in on this one because I didn't see much of the Ubuntu image have the problem, but we do have a lot of with in the past the Fedora and CentOS. Also, even that is not a particularly kernel, right? So it's just have the specific like the kernel configurations, and our test maybe depend on certain things. And for example, swap test, for example, they have to expect certain configurations. And and also systemd. A lot of times systemd actually in the past, not today, in the past at the earlier stage and the systemd version upgrade and cause node failure. And those node failure not necessarily is Kubernetes problem, but your cause of the node test fail. Right, so because there's also have the E2E test, the certain things we are stress of load environment. In your production, maybe you are rarely run into those problems because the science nodes there. So even we have the problem, Kubernetes will quickly come up the new node and all the job is just scheduled to the new node. The problem it is on the test, right? So there's you are literally expected a certain behavior is item pattern, and then you expect certain things to return and a certain behavior. So so sometimes run into problem for us. So again, like the open source is community, is the open is volunteer based. So when there's trying
Okay, I
to
understand.
right, yeah. So the people just kind of say, oh, this is like an images problem or node or the VM problem, all those kind of things. They don't want to spend a lot of time to invest in details. So then end up those tests always is right. And then we paper over the real problem and then really not unblock or maybe you slow down the release or development process. So this is why I expected the test is more green. And so if we want to make that it is really useful, test is greener. So we need some expertise, at least from initial time, and help to make everything is smooth.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, we can continue discussion at tomorrow meeting, but yeah, and offline as well. Let's. We have 13 minutes left and 3 topics. Atanas, do you want to update on what's going on?
Sure. Yeah, we have today 2 meetings for our community updates on the CAP for the resource manager plugins. So in the first meeting, we gave some updates on the changes, what we are planning for the attribute-based API, and also clarify some of the open questions in the CAP, which were posed, which were asked about the attribute-based API, just to give some more context. Then we were going through the latest on the architecture. We got good input from Kevin, what we could do better there. Basically, we are going to go towards a single CCI driver implementation. So basically, we will not require a separate node driver or something like that to understand DRA claims. This was the conclusion after the meeting. And at the end, we had some demo just to go through some scenarios, like how to bootstrap the system, if bootstrapping of the system is working, if we can start some pods which do not require claims, and then also look at what happens if the driver is not up, and at the end try to allocate something. That was what we did today.
Yeah, if there is a meeting recording, you can share it with me. I can upload to YouTube.
Sure. Yep. And maybe last update, we plan to push an updated documentation in the CAP around Friday latest, by beginning of next week.
Okay. Thank you for update. Anybody wants to tell something about it? If not, we can move on. Yeah, this is just minor topic. as part of annual review, we will be updating some owners files. And yeah, I was stumbled in one of the PRs. We needed change of this events go document, and I was wondering if we don't. I was mostly wanted to ask you and Derek, like, what's the history of? There is a couple teams in owners files, API, not API approvers and node approvers. In this API approvers, is it for CRI specifically or for all APIs, including like event names and such?
We do have the node level of the API approver. At least for a while, Derek and I was the node API reviewer of just, I want to limit myself only on the node side. But I guess yeah, so we include all the node level of the API. Let me double check with Derek, because for a while, I think I removed myself and leave Derek there, represent node. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do need, we do need, we cannot always just only rely on the API approver for our API.
Okay. I will sync up with you to check on that.
Sure.
Okay, Philippe, you here? Let's talk about read-only CRI. It's a very exciting topic.
Yeah, so some quick background really is been building a project that has required access to both the CRI API and the Containerd socket. After looking into it a bit, I started kind of questioning why we don't have any RBAC permissions or some sort of read-only version of access to Containerd socket. As we all know, privileged containers having access to the Containerd socket is basically being root on the node. There are like other applications like Falco and other telemetry solutions that also just read events on containers, for example, that really don't need this type of access. And it seems like the kubelet already has some endpoints like the port forwarding and logs that are basically proxying traffic to the CRI API to be able to do some sort of RBAC enforcement on certain endpoints. Right now, I'm just kind of trying to figure out how to approach this problem and kind of what organization or what domain this is, like where the solution should live. Because there's a discussion, should this be in Containerd? Containerd people might say, no, I don't want RBAC things and read-only solutions in Containerd. There are arguments for the sake of saying, well, the CRIO project would also benefit from this. So I'm trying to, that's kind of where I'm kind of looking for guidance in how to approach this problem or where to kind of put the solution, really.
Yeah, and it will be very interesting to have that. I think my perspective here is if it will be built in Containerd and there will be read-only API in Containerd and CRIO, then many telemetry and security agents will just switch to this immediately because they don't need all this problem with elevating permissions for their agents. So it will be very good from security perspective. Like we have so many agents that suddenly don't need elevated permissions and we'll have more secure environment. But many people on this issue commenting that read-only port on Containerd is not a universal solution. Some RBAC may be needed, some like granular access to specific APIs may be needed. And to solve this problem, Containerd is not the best place. So if we're thinking about cover, like I think read-only covers like 80% of scenarios, like off the top of my head, and like just coming up with numbers. But then like the rest of 20% of scenarios probably will be covered better if you will start this as a project on Kubernetes rather than on container runtimes. So the real question is, do you want to start this project on Kubernetes and as part of SIG Node, or you want to push harder to address this 80% of solutions on Containerd and be done with that, at least for the time being?
Yeah, that is really the question. I see it as, I really understand your point of putting this in Containerd, and I don't know really how to move forward with getting kind of people on the Containerd project to say that this is a good idea. But I also see, looking at the current kubelet code, and the proxying, the traffic it proxies today to the CRI, there would be benefits to the the Kubernetes project to have a more high-level RBAC solution, because then you could just get rid of those kind of slightly undocumented proxy endpoints on the kubelet.
I think Mike is on the call. Mike, do you have any opinions from containerd perspective? Like, is there anything?
Yeah, I haven't given it a whole lot of thought, not for the last 4 years. We could certainly talk about it again. Get together a few of the container runtime members and give this a thought. I mean, I'm not sure how you would want to split up the CRI API with RBAC. It would be interesting, but I'm not sure. I see the benefit certainly on a lot of the streaming APIs, right? Exec with response and stuff like that for security purposes. But then why would you want to split up, the other APIs? I would need to see a bigger, description of it, or at least we'd have to have a long discussion about it.
Yeah, for my use case, really having a read-only continuous like CRI API would be fine for me. I think there were other people who just said like, oh yeah, no, but more granular access would be nice. But from my
I get it, but we've also got namespaces in the container runtimes. We have lots of scope issues with the various pods. Is it read only for my pod or a particular user? This is going to open up a can of worms. Let's just put it that way. We'll want to discuss. I just haven't given it a whole lot of thought yet.
Yeah, no, but I'm open for discussing it. That's kind of where I brought it up.
If you can get, there were a couple of people that already responded in the PR that are interested. Samuel, on the other side, I imagine Bernal, and probably a couple others and the cryo team are going to be interested in, doing that. We also have a TTRPC API that we could probably use as well. We've had a lot of namespace discussions of late, right? About would you want one per runtime handler? What if it's a VM, right? Confidential containers. Why are we going to a read only, right? What was the real reason? And is that just for a monitoring tool for every namespace? Is that really what we're looking for, or was it something else? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. No, I get that. So it's yeah. For my use case, I'm kind of a weird one where I read the container or image layers through the containerd socket, basically.
Okay.
And yeah, but I get that there are a whole bag of just random issues in regards to namespacing and
right.
And
exactly. Like and we don't only support root. Yeah, we do rootless as well, and that's why you've seen some of those, right? And we've done remote proxy, but yeah, for kubelet we do have a specific thing we need, for streaming. So if you're talking about with kubelet, that's different. They would only use the, all the other APIs. So, and let's be fair, the CRI API is really for kubelet, right? And any other cloud provider. It's not just for monitoring. But we do have monitoring APIs that might be more, more efficient, okay, over HTTP or some other protocol.
But even Kubernetes have the monitoring API, but also is kept at the Kubernetes level, which
exactly.
Exactly. So we did clean up in the past because there's the performance downgrade. We used to export more data than today, and there's some issue, right? The efficiency issue because we're using too much resource on the node, just for monitoring. So that's why we have to do the cleanup, evolve those, and cap at some like what's the control level of the metrics really needed. So what it is the monitoring, but at the Kubernetes first class object level. So that's kind of things we back and forth being discussed so many times in the past. So yeah, Philip, what you ask for actually is not a surprise, but it's just like Mac said is like open account of the one. And also I do have a concern it is about like the how much detail when you really ask the vendor to offer Kubernetes, so the admin to run this one, how much you want to expose on the node the details through the monitoring tools. So how you're going to make sure certain things can be monitored and export and surface to the other monitoring tools, then that's actually is more complicated. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
no, I kind of guess that this is like there are things that I don't see here, considering the fact that it is not implemented. It's kind of, it becomes kind of a yeah, if this was easy, I think somebody would have done this a long time ago. But it's obviously not easy, and that's kind of why it becomes that issue. But if the issue that I'm seeing is that myself with my projects and a lot of other projects tend to just go, okay, let's just mount container DSOC and be done with it. That's kind of really
and you have to be root to do that because that's the word you're using. Yeah. I see it. Yeah. Okay.
So it's
not only about being root, it's also well, privileged profile of deployment if you deploy your component as daemon set. Because with spot security admission controller, like you cannot deploy something in baseline security model which mounts the sockets.
And
So
since
it's another kind of
there's a possibility we have other APIs that you might be interested in. We're implementing a new thing called Node Resource Interface which should be able to handle some of these situations. Just a thought. As soon as that's in Cryo, then maybe there's a different route than using the Cryo API. Okay.
Yeah, we're already out of time. I think one of the worry I have is we're trying to protect ourselves and like we have this boundary of root, and but then we move all the security problems on the user, so they need to allow this privileged daemon sets because they want monitoring. So I want to make sure that we take into consideration that we don't only want to protect ourselves but also help customers. Yeah. Philip, I think next step is to, as Mike suggested, to get more people on Containerd and maybe CryoSite, and maybe we can have a separate meeting for that to continue that. Or maybe we can, like, Mike, if you have suggestions, what kind of details we need to flesh out before the meeting, it will be great. Like, nice. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're out of time. If there's anything else, we always on Slack. Bye-bye.
Sergey, quick one. I resolved the conflicts. Please re-LGTM it when you get the chance for the Node CI. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.